Hello, this is BBC World News. I'm Lewis Vaughan-Jones, continuing our special coverage of the announcement from Buckingham Palace about the future of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. The Queen says Prince Harry and Meghan are to give up their royal titles as they step down as working royals. The couple will pay back more than $3 million of public money spent on refurbishing their residence, Frogmore Cottage in Windsor. They will also stop receiving public funding for royal duties, and Harry will resign from his official military appointments. Hello, welcome to BBC World News. Prince Harry and Meghan will no longer use their royal titles and will no longer receive public funds to carry out royal duties. This has been confirmed by Buckingham Palace. The Sussexes will no longer represent the Queen as working members of the royal family, and this includes the official military appointments of Prince Harry. The new approach is expected to come into effect in the spring. In a statement, Her Majesty the Queen said, "Following many months of conversations and more recent discussions, I am pleased that together we have found a constructive and supportive way forward for my grandson and his family. Harry, Meghan and Archie will always be much-loved members of my family." Well, let's talk now to our royal correspondent, Danielle Ralph, who's outside Buckingham Palace. Danielle, just puts this into a bit of context for us. This seems like a hugely significant moment, not only for the couple themselves, but for the royal family.
Yeah, it's hugely significant. It's taken the past week or so to really drill down into some of the nitty-gritty of how this is going to work, and there have been various meetings going on at the highest levels of government and the royal family to come up with this plan for the Sussexes going forward. But it is a significant moment. They are stepping away from being senior working members of the British royal family, and they are stepping away, I think, with a great deal of regret on behalf of the Queen in particular, in terms of not being able to really sort of use them to their full potential in terms of royal working life. And I think, you know, yes, there is a sort of pragmatism here at Buckingham Palace about moving forward and trying to make this new plan work for Harry and Meghan, but also a great deal of regret that they have found themselves in a position where they have chosen to step away from public royal life.
Well, let's drill down into some of the practicalities now then that have been addressed. Well, let's start with the ones that have been addressed, and then we'll come on to the matters that haven't been addressed. But as for the ones that have, things like paying back the money for the house refurbishment, but actually that will still remain their UK home.
That's right. Frogmore Cottage, which is a house, it's not really a cottage, it's quite a substantial house, within the grounds of Windsor Great Park in Windsor, where Windsor Castle is placed. They have a house sort of securely in the grounds there. This will remain their family home, as you say. But what happened is when it was decided that Harry and Meghan were going to live there and the Queen gifted them the property, it was actually 5 separate sort of apartments for staff working at Windsor Castle. So the whole thing had to be reconfigured, and various amounts of building work were done, and around $3 million of UK public money was spent trying to getting that work done. That will now be repaid by Harry and Meghan, and the tone of the statement suggests it was their wish to do so. That's what they wanted to do so. So that will be paid back, but as you say, it will still remain their UK home. But having said that, we have also been told that the couple will be now spending most of their time in North America.
And interesting, let's carry on that theme then. In North America, what exactly are they going to be doing? They're not going to be receiving public funds for any royal work. How are they going to earn money now? What's going to happen?
Yeah, this is the real tricky, thorny issue in all of this, and it's where there are some real gaps in terms of the information we have. And I suspect some of it just hasn't been worked through. There aren't going to be any strict guidelines applied to the kind of commercial work that Harry and Meghan are now going to have to undertake to afford the kind of lifestyle that they want to lead. There aren't going to be any rules and regulations. All that we have been told is that they will take work, take contracts, whatever it is, that will uphold the values of Her Majesty the Queen. Now, what does that mean? It's not at all clear, but that they will definitely only do stuff that is in the spirit of the kind of thing that the Queen would support. So, you know, that's a very broad issue at the moment in terms of how that will actually work and what they will do. But that clearly the Queen has decided to give them the freedom to do this kind of commercial work, be it sort of, you know, taking on a brand. Perhaps, you know, Meghan may do some kind of acting related work. That they're going to have the freedom to sort of pursue that without any strict oversight here from the UK. But having said that, in a year's time, this whole programme from Harry and Meghan is going to be reviewed by the Queen, the Prince of Wales, Harry's father, his brother William. They will all get together, look at how it's worked over the past year and see if this is the right thing to continue doing going forward. But in terms of the kind of work they do in order to earn money, which is what they're now going to have to do because they're not getting any public money, you know, they seem to be able to have free rein, with the only caveat being they have to uphold the values of the Queen.
Fascinating details there, Daniela. I just want you to just very quickly clear this up for our audience around the world. This issue of the titles, HRH, what's that stand for? What's it mean? And they're not being stripped of them, are they?
No, not at all. HRH, Her Royal Highness, His Royal Highness, it's the kind of status you get given when you become a working member of the royal family. Now, because they're not going to continue to be working members of the royal family, they are having the HRHs taken away. So it's not that they're not going to still hold on to them, it's just they won't be able to use them publicly. So they will still be sort of HRHs in private should they want to use it. But publicly, they won't be a His or Her Royal Highness. But Harry remains a prince, they remain the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. All those titles are still in play and still in use publicly. So they will carry on to do that. And you know, they remain members of the British royal family. They just won't be working members of the British royal family.
Thank you very much for clearing that up. I think that's really important just to get that detail right. Right, let's get on to the reaction. I know you've been speaking to officials in Buckingham Palace behind you just there. What's the feeling? You know, we got very warm words from the statement from Her Majesty the Queen. What do you make of the language that she used?
I think it's absolutely fascinating. We had a statement on Monday when there was this big family meeting at the Queen's Norfolk estate in Sandringham, and then we've got this statement again on behalf of the Queen, you know, her own words really being used in the kind of information and statement we're being given. And it sort of reads to me really like sort of the wording of a slightly sort of worried grandmother trying to sort of fix a problem in her family. It doesn't really read like the monarch making a sort of rather formal public statement, which is what we are used to seeing. The tone, the mood, the wording is very different. She talks about Harry, Meghan and Archie being much loved. She talks about Meghan having, you know, her being so proud at the way Meghan has fitted into the royal family. And she says, you know, going forward, she hopes that these changes that are now being made to the kind of life that they lead will ensure that they will have a happy and peaceful life going forward. So, you know, the Queen being quite pragmatic in terms of, you know, having to find a solution here, but also you can sense her regret and wanting to try and fix things for Harry and Meghan. That's
a really interesting insight, Daniela. And just on that theme, give us an idea of how you came about this news. People are always fascinated, especially with the working of the royal family, about how these things, you know, the formality and the information flow, which is so tightly controlled. What happened just a couple of hours ago?
Yeah, sure. Well, on Monday, initially, when there was this family meeting at Sandringham, we were told that the Queen was very keen for this whole sort of business to be resolved as quickly as possible and not to have it hanging over the royal family. So it's pretty clear that over the course of the past 5 or 6 days, there have been lots of discussions between staff here at Buckingham Palace, the private secretaries, the press secretaries, but also with government here in the UK, with the Foreign Office, the Home Office, with the Metropolitan Police here in London who provide protection to the royal family. There's been a whole raft of discussions going on. We were expecting to have a statement perhaps yesterday or today. What happened earlier is we had a briefing over the telephone, a conference call, all the royal correspondents with the senior communications officers for each of the senior members of the royal family. So for the Queen, for the Duke of Cambridge, for the Prince of Wales, and for Harry and Meghan. And they explained to us the thinking behind the statements that you've been reading out, how we got to this place, about the discussions that have been going on, and fielded a number of questions about how it will work going forward, a lot of which we just don't have the answers to. We were then allowed to make public all of that detail around an hour or so ago. So it was a sort of briefing for us all to ask some questions, a forum to try and chat about what's happening, and then, you know, we were allowed to go public with the detail.
Interesting stuff. And now I did promise we'll get on to some of the things that weren't in the statement, and I know you won't be able to give us detail on the answers, but just talk us through some of the issues that are still to be resolved. I'm thinking about things like tax, immigration status, security, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, security is probably the most obvious one. You know, who is going to pay for their personal security when they are living in Canada? That is just not clear. Justin Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister, was quite cautious about what would happen earlier in the week. He said, you know, discussions were going to be had over that. Today, we were told it's just not going to be discussed. Security of the royal family is also always a private matter, a private issue, not for a public forum, and they will not take that any further. So it's just really unclear as to how that will be paid for and how that will practically work when they are no longer living here in the UK with all of the protection that comes with the Metropolitan Police and the staff that they provide. Again, as you say, tax, immigration, residency. You know, what sort of dispensations are going to be made for Harry and Meghan, if any? You know, you can't just sort of turn up in Canada and just decide to live there. There's all sorts of residency issues, immigration issues, tax issues. Again, the detail of that just doesn't quite seem to have been properly decided upon, I sense, at the moment. Again, a question was asked to the royal staff earlier about Meghan's British citizenship. When they were engaged and the plans were going on for the wedding, we were told that she was in the process of applying to become a British citizen. Is that still going on? We just don't know. It would seem to be difficult to see how that could continue because, you know, she is going to be spending most of her year, we're now told, living in North America. So her residency here in the UK will be changed. It doesn't really sort of play into becoming a British citizen. So again, what's happening with all of that? So a number of different issues still to be sorted out, but security was the big one. You know, who pays for it? I think we probably just aren't going to know that.
Interesting. And lastly, Daniela, just one final point. How, given your knowledge of the couple themselves, of the royal family, how do you think Harry and Meghan will be feeling now? Do you think they will feel satisfied that this is what they wanted, this is the arrangement that they wanted?
Yeah, I think they will. I mean, my sense is that Harry and Meghan will probably feel incredibly relieved at what's happened here and the kind of freedom that they have been given to pursue the kind of life that they want. But for the rest of the royal family, I think there will be a sense of regret that they are no longer going to be part of their thinking in terms of the work the royal family does and some of those official duties that are so important to royal life here in the UK. I think particularly from the Queen and the Prince of Wales, Harry's father, there will just be a sense that, you know, they can't really sort of use Harry and Meghan in the nicest possible way, in the way that they would have liked. You know, Meghan came from a very different background to a normal member of the British royal family. She brought something different to the table, and I think there will be a sense of regret that that can't be exploited and pursued.
Daniela, your insights have been absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much for talking us through that. That's Daniela Ralph there at Buckingham Palace. Well, today's decision is a landmark for the royal family and, of course, the Duke and Duchess. Our royal correspondent Sarah Campbell looks back at the couple's story so far.
They'd met just over a year earlier, but these were the first pictures in September 2017, which showed the relationship was serious. Meghan lived and worked in Toronto, Canada, the host city for Prince Harry's Invictus Games. 2 months later, their engagement was announced, and the couple were interviewed in Kensington Palace by the BBC's Michelle Hussain.
How much of a sense did you have, Meghan, of the enormity of what you were getting into, what it might mean for your life?
I think I can very safely say, as naive as it sounds now, having gone through this learning curve in the past year and a half, I did not have any understanding of just what it would be like. I don't think either of us did that. We both said that, even though we knew that it would be.
Yeah, I tried to warn you as much as possible, but I think both of us were totally surprised by the reaction after the first 5-6 months of when we had to ourselves of what actually happened from then.
4 days later, the couple carried out their first engagement together in Nottingham. Just like Harry, she was tactile, informal and confident. This seemed a different kind of royal walkabout. When Meghan joined Harry, Prince William and Catherine on stage as the soon-to-be patron of the Royal Foundation, it seemed like the future of the royal family was safe in the hands of the so-called Fab Four. Their wedding was watched by millions around the world and seemed the perfect end to a fairy tale romance. By January 2019, Meghan was pregnant and expanding her royal role with the announcement of her first 4 patronages. But behind the scenes, there were several unexpected moves. First, rather than live in Kensington Palace next to the Cambridges, they chose Frogmore Cottage in Windsor. They moved their staff from Kensington Palace to Buckingham Palace. And then in June, it was revealed the Sussexes would be exiting the Royal Foundation and setting up their own instead. The split led to rumours of a rift between Harry and his brother William, which weren't denied when Harry was asked about them in October of last year. Towards the end of their high-profile tour of Southern Africa, Harry and Meghan announced legal action against British tabloids, with both making clear they were struggling in the royal spotlight. It had been hoped they would return from their extended Christmas break in Canada, refreshed and ready to resume royal duties. But instead, they announced they wanted to step back as senior royals. After talks with Prince Harry at Sandringham, the Queen released a statement saying, "Although we would have preferred them to remain full-time working members of the royal family, we respect and understand their wish to live a more independent life as a family while remaining a valued part of my family." The Queen said she wanted final decisions within days. Those decisions regarding Harry and Meghan's future have now been made. Sarah Campbell, BBC News.
Yep, those decisions have been made, and former Buckingham Palace press secretary and spokesperson for Queen Elizabeth, Dickie Arbiter, says he was disappointed by the news that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex are stepping back from their full royal duties.
It's all very sad. I mean, it was all very sad that they made this decision Wednesday week ago. This, I suppose, is the best that they could get out of it. The Queen is very pragmatic and realises that Harry and Meghan have made a decision. They want to step back from frontline royal duties, and the Queen has tried to accommodate them. And as such, they have stepped back. They are not using their HRH titles, although as far as America is concerned, they'll probably use it. If you go back years ago, at the time that the Duke of Windsor visited the United States, he always referred to the Duchess of Windsor. She didn't have the HRH, but he used to refer to her as HRH, and the Americans refer to her as HRH as well. So the Americans will probably still use it, although the Sussexes won't. But as far as the repayment of the £2.4 million for the refurbishment of Frogmore Cottage, a good move. There was quite a furore over the amount of money that was spent on it. It had to be spent, probably not that much, but it had to be refurbished. So that is a good move. It talks about security. They don't talk about security. But you've got to remember, Harry, he was in the army. He did 2 tours of duty in Afghanistan. The police still think that there is a threat against him because of who he is, because of his army duty, because he's the grandson of the Queen, he's the son of the Prince of Wales, and therefore security will probably be maintained. They'll have to work out how they're going to do it and how they're going to afford it.
That was Dickie Arbiter there. And a short while ago, my colleague Martin Grotzall spoke to the BBC's royal correspondent for the latest.
Well, there's a very warm statement from the Queen. Harry, Meghan and Archie will always be much-loved members of my family, and she goes on to say that I'm particularly proud of how Meghan has so quickly become one of the family. So I think that that is, again, very empathetic from the Queen. But then, in terms of the details, here are the headlines. They will not henceforward use their HRH titles. They are not losing that thing that signifies royal rank, his and her Royal Highnesses, but they will no longer use their HRH titles as they are no longer working members of the royal family. So for somebody who remains a prince and remains 6th in line to the throne, that is, of course, extremely unusual that he will not call himself His Royal Highness, but he will be Harry, Duke of Sussex. They will repay the amount from public funds which was spent on the refurbishment of Frogmore Cottage. And let me just quote from this. They understand that they are required to step back from royal duties, including official military appointments. So that means that Harry will no longer, I presume, be Captain General of the Royal Marines, because that will be one of the military appointments from which he is required now to step back. They will no longer receive public funds for royal duties. So no further funds for them from the sovereign grant, though it's clear that they will continue to receive funds from the Prince of Wales, from his Duchy of Cornwall estate, and that amounts to about £2 or £3 million a year. In terms of their earning capacity and their ability to go out and earn the money that they are now going to need, there is nothing here which specifies any restrictions on that, other than this. The Sussexes have made clear that everything they do will continue to uphold the values of Her Majesty. Now that is being taken to be their understanding and their agreement that they will not do anything which too blatantly trades on the royal family name or the fact of their royal status. But other than that, there is nothing in this really quite short statement which spells out the kind of thing that they will not be permitted to do in terms of commercial activity. One question which is unresolved is whether their new website, which is under the name, of course, Sussex Royal, whether that will be permitted, because in a sense they will not be royal. They are stepping back as members of the royal family, but of course they have gone to a lot of trouble to trademark this Sussex Royal handle to all their activities. But that's one unresolved areas. There will be a transition period now. I suspect that we may well see them carrying out several more public engagements in this country before this collection of undertakings, this package, if you like, will take effect in the spring. Yes, the new model will take effect in the spring of 2020. Nothing about security. Buckingham Palace does not comment on the details of security arrangements, but they say that there are well-established processes which will ensure that their security is taken care of. And it would appear that whilst we know that they will divide their time between the United Kingdom and North America, it is expected that they will spend the majority of their time in North America now.
You talk about the warmth in this statement. It's in keeping with the previous one that we had from the Queen a few days ago, isn't it? Insofar as that she refers to them as Harry, Meghan and Archie, my family, which for a royal communication is quite unusual.
Yes, and I think that she is going out of her way to retain the family bonds and to underline the sense that although they are stepping back as senior members of the royal family, although they are going to spend most of their time in North America, one presumes in Canada, that the family bond remains as strong as ever. Now, clearly, nothing is ever quite as it appears at face value. It has taken them considerably longer to come to this agreement than we had expected. We were expecting it yesterday. We've been obviously waiting for it all through today. I think it is clear that there were several areas which required further discussion. There may have been some quite tricky areas for them to resolve. There was certainly a point yesterday when it was certainly thought that they would be giving up their HRH titles. But that has been resolved in this way, that they will not use their HRH titles, although they will retain them. They're not, as it were, being stripped of their royal rank. That, of course, would have been completely unprecedented for a blood royal, somebody born into the royal family, to lose the HRH handle, which is a measure of royal rank. It is something that is given to people who are full-time working members of the royal family in most cases, but that issue has been resolved on this occasion with the Sussexes will not use their HRH titles. It leaves the way open, I suppose, that if they decide to resume full-time work as members of the royal family, they can start to use their HRH titles, or Harry could start to use his HRH title once again, but for the moment they will simply not use them.
The previous statement that was issued by the Queen a few days ago talked about how she was sorry, the Queen was sorry that they were not going to be playing the same part as before. Do you think that they would have been under any pressure to rethink?
I sense that the Queen and the other senior members of the royal family have recognised that this is what they absolutely want, that this is what Harry wants, and so they have accepted it, and they have now sought and found a way of making it work. And it does say, following, this is the statement from the Queen, it does say following many months of conversations and more recent discussions. So that implies, well, it doesn't imply, it says that the conversations have been going on for, quotes, many months. And she says that I'm pleased that together we have found a constructive and supportive way forward for my grandson and his family. And she goes on to say that I recognise the challenges they have experienced as a result of intense scrutiny over the last 2 years and support their wish for a more independent life. So that's significant. The Queen says that she supports their wish for a more independent life, and I want to thank them for all their dedicated work across this country, the Commonwealth and beyond. And as I mentioned earlier, she goes on to say that I'm particularly proud of how Meghan has so quickly become one of the family. And she concludes her statement, "It is my whole family's hope that today's agreement allows them to start building a happy and peaceful new life."
That was Nicholas Witchell there. So, our breaking news this hour. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex, Prince Harry and his wife Meghan, have reached an agreement with Buckingham Palace over their desire to step back from public life. They will no longer be working members of the royal family and will not receive public funds for such duties, nor will they use their Royal Highness titles. Stay with us here on BBC News.